Hey, Paul. Everything go okay with the,
Thanks, it was early morning, but it went better than expected.
yes.
Yeah. You'll be fine. Okay. You roll out there, guys. This is AP.
All right, and I am in WebEx and the meeting has started, so.
We sit in that. I called it.
Yep.
Aaron had messaged about Bob needing security passcode, so.
Yep.
Got that done, figuring we see him today.
Thank you.
How did we go for you?
Oh, thanks, Chris. Good. Yeah. Just too far. I need. Sure. Give you the phone.
So that we got lots of,
So,
so just confirming if I
this morning.
can participate at the WebEx.
Make sure that you add some shoes. Or if that's the plan.
No, they're usually last minute.
No match.
Terry said she will come in here. She lives for part of the country, so.
Yeah, but
Following that one out.
We have so many trees right on the river.
okay. They did a nice job with her. They did.
Yes.
A lot of expert.
That's gonna come along. You can keep us posted on.
Hey, Terry.
Hi. I'm glad you're here for the WebEx because I bet nobody else is coming but me.
Did you hear from, any of the others or?
No, and I did see Jan's post, I called her, just so you know. I called her to just kind of push that down a little bit. You'll learn.
I'm learning.
But anyway, and I told her, just so she wouldn't get upset, that at my meeting, we do not read letters into the record. We do not do that. I said, we will attach them to the agenda and I'll make sure that Deb has it attached to the agenda for her. So, and she was okay with that. So, because we don't, I mean, you could, that is such a rabbit hole at any of these committee meetings. That's,
Spend an hour reading.
we shouldn't even do it at village board. If the person cannot get off their butt and come into that meeting to make those comments, don't expect us to sit here reading about it.
You know, and I agree, and I think it was you said this one of the board meetings, the purpose of public comment is not for everybody else to hear the comments, it's for the board to hear citizens.
That's right.
Before making a decision. So, and having it printed out,
Yeah.
does it, that just as well as.
Yeah, that's because that's not happening. Just,
Yeah, Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Harry, everybody, I hear you right now. WebEx is starting.
Oh, your microphone is on.
Oh, Okay, where's our button here? Perfect. It's 5:30. We'll call this meeting of the Public Works and Highway Committee to order. Roll call shows all committee members are present. We'll entertain approval of the minutes from the 6th of December.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Any changes, any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Public comment. Is there anybody? Doesn't look like we have anybody here other than staff, so I'll assume that there's no public comment here. How about on WebEx? Any?
No one on WebEx.
Okay, and we'll move on to new business. New business A, acceptance of improvements for the Willow Creek Dickman, I guess, what is it, subdivision or
Building.
building? Okay.
All right, so with this item, essentially the footprint of the Dickman Willow Creek multi-tenant facility required a relocation of an existing segment of the sanitary main. The relay was performed by J.M. Brennan on behalf of Brian. Wastewater Utilities inspected this and approved, and we're looking for you to do the same with your approval. That will start a 1-year warranty period.
Committee,
Motion to approve the acceptance of improvements for Willow Creek Dickman.
Second.
any comments or discussion? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And moving on to item B, Highway Department Patrol Truck Purchase.
So with this item, we recently got bids for the replacement of truck 470. It's matching single axle Western Star plow truck. The bids came in from 2 different companies that are Western Star dealers. One is Truck Country, the other is iState. The bids were actually very close together, actually within $561 of each other. Truck Country was a little more expensive at $285,822, and a little unusual, but we're asking that you approve the award to Truck Country. And there's a couple reasons for that. With the market the way it is with these vehicle purchases, it's very hard to switch vendors and guarantee that you're able to get your build spot. We've had a good relationship over the last couple of years with Truck Country, and they were actually able to provide on schedule the replacements over the past couple of years. So even though it is slightly more expensive, we'd like to award the contract with them and kind of stay in their schedule, at least for this year. Things may change substantially enough by next year where we don't have to do that. But I think just for the sake of reducing our risk and missing a truck, we'd like to go that route with your approval this year.
Okay, I think we should point out this was approved in the budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay, committee? Thoughts,
Make-
comments?
Make a motion to approve the purchase from Truck Country of Wisconsin not to exceed the budgeted price of $286,000 from Highway Capital Account 40562
Second.
Questions, comments? Something we do every year, so we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. 2024 Parks Department pickup truck purchase.
All right, this is a similar item where we're looking to make our budgeted 2024 purchase replacement of a Parks Division pickup truck. These are just a little different. With these smaller vehicles, how ordering is working right now is pricing and ordering windows come up. And we can't really get exact answers on when that will be and with what type of dealer that will be with. So we want to be prepared and sort of get pre-approval to purchase this truck. Once we're able to get a quote and then place the order, we think we want to be able to do that quickly, again, just to ensure that we'll be able to receive the truck this year.
Committee? Do you have a
So
question?
question, yeah, when's the window? Do we know? Or do they just call and, or your rep calls and says, window's open?
Yeah, it's something that you have to monitor. We don't know exactly, and that's why we'd like to get the approval kind of done right away at the beginning of the year here, so we're able to act on it when it does happen. They can give you ranges at times, but The exact date isn't known until, closer to when it opens.
And again, budgeted item, right?
Budgeted item, yes.
Go ahead.
Would we get to approve the purchase when we know the exact price, or is this a one-shot deal?
The way it's written here, it's a one-shot deal not to exceed $60,000, which is approximately what this truck is going to cost. It's going to go, pretty close up to that number.
It's only if they need more.
Right. Which we hope will not be the case.
Bob, any questions, comments? So the Ewald thing here, so if we don't make the window, then we go to Ewald and buy, is that how that works?
Ewald has the state contract,
Okay,
and it works very similar.
okay.
With periods of time where you're able to get estimates and then periods of time where you're able to submit the
Gotcha.
answers.
Okay, committee?
I'll make a motion to recommend the purchase of a 2025 model year pickup truck in the amount not to exceed $60,000 and forward the request to the village board with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Any more comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to D. Oh, yeah, now comes the big stuff. Contract award for Tower 3 rehabilitation.
So the Tower 3 rehab, Tower 3 is located on Mequon Road toward the east end of the village. The paint on that tower is 22 years old and at the end of its service life. So this contract is three things really. It's sandblasting, it's painting, and then there's a number of other repairs that are listed in the packet there that will also take place with this award. We received a number of bids, and Seven Brothers Painting was the low bid at $809,050. We are recommending to go ahead with that bid. Couple other things about this project that are worth noting. We'll likely be using the DNR Safe Drinking Water Loan Program to finance this. It's something that the village hasn't done yet, but it's a low interest rate loan that we would apply for in like the June, July timeframe. Funding would be received in late 2024. So anything, any costs that we incur between, basically now and the end of 2024 would have to be floated by the village and then reimbursed when we receive the allocation towards the end of the year. With this one, and then this is a little different than one we're going to be getting to in a minute. With this one, we'll get the full allocation at the end of the year. So then any other expenses that are incurred, we can immediately access. As I mentioned here, there are some additional administrative burdens with the loan program that do end up costing us a little bit more in terms of consulting fees because they typically manage the paperwork and all the administration with the DNR. But there's still a payoff compared to traditional financing methods. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
We're going to borrow for this either way. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think there is another option for the village board, but the recommendation is to borrow. The lowest interest rate would be the safe drinking
Right.
water loans. The other option would be to issue part of our general bond issuance, revenue bonds for the utility. The third option, there is a reserve in the water utility, but I actually spoke with Ehlers earlier today about this and just double checking with them. And because we want to make sure we keep the minimum level of reserves in the water utility, that we'd recommend not using that.
So this is the best option,
This is the
correct?
best option.
As far as the analysis. How long is the loan for? Does it say that in here?
I don't have that information. That's something that we would have to work out with
Okay.
both who's doing the consulting and the DNR, but I don't have the exact terms
Okay.
available.
And the one other thing that I would mention is we will need to bring back a reimbursement resolution next month because since we are going to be taking out on debt on this, we'll need a resolution that indicates that that's the plan because the debt will be coming later.
And my last comment was, wow, how could the bids be so dramatically broad? I mean, from 809,000 And that to me, honestly, we've been talking about painting this water tower for what, 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And that price really has kind of stayed right in that ballpark, which kind of surprises me. But how do they justify $1.8 million for painting the water tower? On the high side, I mean, they just didn't want the work and they,
Yeah, I mean, I think when you get a price like that, you're basically paying to move them off of another job.
I gotcha, okay. Because yeah, that range was crazy, basically double.
You see that.
I'm sorry, any more comments or questions or motion?
Question.
Well,
So does the construction administration, is that covered by the grant also? Inspection?
Yes, I believe the construction administration, the loan processing, as well as the construction activities themselves.
I would assume that this is pretty technically advanced where staff, internal staff could not do the inspection? Is that why we always use FOLF?
Well, which inspection? Just the construction administration?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty time consuming and there'll actually, I mean, if you proceed with all three of these, that'll be a lot of work going on in one season. And, you know, we just don't have the staff available to do that. I mean, we're hoping in the future to build out and maybe be able to do that internally more often. But I think that we want to have somebody with the technical expertise specifically, you know, when it comes to tower rehabs on these projects inspecting for us.
So their FOLF's estimate for these services is about 18% of the contract amount.
Yep.
Usually what I see is 10 to 12%. Now, I'll be the first to admit I'm not a water guy. So I don't know, technically, does it require more than other inspections? Is that why we're seeing 18% versus 10% of the construction cost?
What you're seeing there is basically what it costs for them to administer the DNR loan program. That's the kind of the delta. And even though that is a big enough number, the savings is still there in the end versus another form of borrowing.
Okay, thanks.
anybody else? No?
What's our schedule? When do we start?
Well, if we award this, we would get potentially village board approval next week and award the contract. You know, there's probably a few weeks delay, but we could get things going and set a schedule, and we could talk about that, you know, at a future meeting. But ideally, we'd be doing the work this summer.
Can I do any of this work in the winter?
That's a good question. I don't have, Paul's shaking his head no.
Didn't think so. Okay, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to enter into a contract for Tower 3 painting with Seven Brothers Painting Incorporated in the amount of $809,050.
Second.
Any more comments, questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. E, contract award for well 5 rehab.
All right, this one is a little more straightforward. The Well 5 rehab, Well 5 is located off of Western Avenue. And it's been slated for 10-year DNR inspection and rehab. There's just some basic things that need to be done. New motor, new pump assembly, full column pipe with epoxy inside and out, and repair work on discharge piping, as well as some recommendations on treatment that we can incorporate into our operations. The bids came in pretty favorably again, with Mid-City Corporation being the low one at $111,005. The design work is already covered under an existing agreement, and these are 2024 budgeted funds.
Me?
Just one question. Paul, have we used Mid-City before? The name sounds familiar.
We have not.
We haven't.
not for well rehab. There might have been some underground work, but not well rehab.
Are you familiar with them? Do you like them?
Yeah, they'll be able to do it. Not a problem.
They're actually pretty well known for this type of work, and we did check some references and got some favorable feedback, so we're pretty confident with their ability to perform the work.
All right, I'll make a motion to award the bid to Mid-City Corporation in the amount of $111,005.
Any more discussion?
Is that going to Village Board? It is. Okay. It didn't say it in the recommendation, so just want to make sure. All right.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And yet we have one more well, contract award for well number 12.
Okay, so well 12 is the well that was drilled in 2021 at Gateway Crossing and Rockfield Road. Foth had the engineering for this one and have been working on that. They finished it in December 2023, so just in the last month or so, and released it for bid. Their estimate was that this was going to come in between $3 and $3.7 million. The low bid was from J.H. Hassinger for $2,557,000. So some pretty favorable results from the bid there. So we're going to recommend that the bid be awarded to J.H. Hassinger. I would note again that this is slated to be a DNR safe drinking water loan financed project, and it works essentially the same way. So we would apply for the loan in, again, like June and July time period, and we would float the cost until the money was allocated towards the end of 2024. What's different about this compared to the last one we talked about is that we'll never get the full allocation, and from that point at the end of 2024 going forward, we'll have to make incremental requests for reimbursement.
Okay. Just a different management process, really.
Correct. But this would be similar in that we would have a contract with the consultant for construction management and the loan administration aspect of it. The majority of that work is under contract, but we would need to add the scope for the loan administration.
Okay. Vinnie?
Just a question on the low interest loans. I mean, low interest is kind of vague. Are we talking about, is it something minus prime, or is it a floating thing, or is it how do they figure that out?
Yeah, I'm not certain I can answer that in a concrete way. But and it could be that, we need to make the application and then know exactly what our rate will be.
But it's under the market rate, obviously.
It's under the market rate and it's subsidized. So I think that's why you're getting the break on the rate.
Subsidized by us. Bob?
Good point.
So we have to apply for this loan yet?
Yes.
Is there a risk that we would not get the loan?
No, I talked to the engineer at Foth and it's more or less a formality.
Okay.
So there's not a risk in awarding the project and not getting the loan.
Okay.
Entertain a motion?
Make a motion to recommend the award to J.H. Hassinger in the amount of $2,557,000.
Second.
Any further discussion?
This is the last build out for that well, right?
Yes.
So after this, does it go online?
It'll go online after construction's completed. Yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Moving on to G, resolution petitioning the Office of the Commissioner of Railroads for the alteration and improvement of a railroad crossing.
So with this item, we have a resolution before you to approve the crossing of the railroad for B Street. And in the exhibits that were attached to this item, there's an Exhibit B and an Exhibit C that are probably worth taking a look at. Exhibit B shows the proposed route of what was called B Street, which is essentially a frontage road that was in the village's 2050 comprehensive plan. And in order for us to construct that route the way it's shown in the comprehensive plan, we'll need this railroad crossing. And if we don't get it, that could substantially change plans and we could be looking at different routes. The reason it's coming before you now is a couple things. One, the decision from the railroad can be a lengthy process. It could take 6 months or a year to get a decision. So the sooner that we can get this started, the better off we'll be in the long run. But then also, we're planning to share this path with the utilities that are going out to Richfield to serve them. So we think that there's some opportunities for efficiency in following that route with the utilities and the road at the same time.
So this is the starting point, is the resolution. This gets the ball rolling with the state, and then we wait, basically.
Yep, we wait. We'll have to present our case at some point in the future in a public forum with the railroad, and a determination will eventually be made.
Okay, committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to the Office of the Commission of Railroads for an alteration of the Wisconsin and Southern Railroad private crossing to become a public crossing.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to H, discussion of the Division Road reconstruction strategy.
All right, with this item, at the last village board meeting in December, we brought the 5-year road plan before the board. And there was a good amount of discussion about Division Road and how it fell within the plan. And I think there were a number of trustees that seemed to be in favor of kind of a larger reconstruction and urbanization approach to Division Road. And I think if we proceed along that path, we really have to treat Division Road kind of as its own project and not part of that 5-year plan, because, you know, you'll see in a minute here, but the funding would be taken up for 3 or 4 years in order to accomplish it. So we wanted to just have a discussion about, you know, what do we want Division Road to look like in the future? But I have just a few points that I think you should consider before we get into that discussion. And the first are utilities. So with wastewater, we are anticipating at some point in the next year, but it's a range year to maybe 5 years, that we'll need to do an upgrade to the Old Farm lift station. And that will include some work on the force main that comes out of Old Farm and goes south on Division Road and then east on Donges Bay. So there's a section of Division Road that will be impacted by that work. So we should accommodate for that plan with whatever we do with Division Road. With water, the main that's in place along Division Road is approximately 30 years old. So it's, you know, a third to 50% through its useful life. It's a ductile iron main. We don't have any documented repair history on the main itself. So I don't think necessarily that needs to be addressed. It could be that in another period of time, you know, it would be a good candidate for lining to extend its useful life. But as part of this project, it's ultimately up to you, but I don't think it's required to upgrade it as part of this project.
Is it under the road or alongside it? You know?
Well, do you under?
Okay.
And then just a couple different funding opportunities that we've kind of batted around in public works and engineering. There are grant opportunities available. There's the Local Road Improvement Program, LRIP, which actually has applications due like this week or next week. It's coming up very quickly. But we could potentially put something together for Division Road there. We do have other roads that could fit into that application as well. There's the STP Urban Grant, which is the grant that has been applied for in the past, from what I understand, unsuccessfully. But what I've learned and sort of the intel is on that it kind of takes patience. So if you are willing to apply 1, 2, 3 years in a row, kind of the more you apply, the higher your chances are of getting the award. But I think the key word there is that it would require patience and us waiting,
The road will be done.
potentially 2, 3, potentially 2, 3 years in order to get funding.
That's all right.
But it remains an option. There's also the ARPA funding that came to the village that's unprogrammed as of yet, and a portion of that could potentially be used to at least get something started in terms of design for the road, and potentially including in that some engagement, like community engagement and maybe even business engagement, to get their feedback on, their thoughts on the road, and do the design. That would buy us some time to figure out how to finance, the rest of the road. And then, of course, there's traditional funding methods as well.
Called borrowing.
Borrowing.
ARPA, what do we have left in that budget? Was it 4 something, I think, Steve, wasn't it? 450-ish?
I actually went through some of the numbers this morning with the finance director. We're planning to present a more detailed report at GGF next
Okay,
week.
great.
Yeah, there is, and it depends. There's some money that's been allocated but not committed, and probably about $500,600,000 that's been allocated but not committed that could be redirected for this.
So we'll hear more at GGF on Monday,
Mhm.
so we can figure that out, because this is just informational, obviously.
Yep,
At
information and
this point.
discussion.
So the total cost here, as I look at your chart, is what for the entire road?
Well, so the attached preliminary construction estimate is essentially looking at this as kind of a full urbanization,
Gutters and curb and gutter.
urban gutter, lighting, sidewalk, so all the amenities that you'd see in an urban cross-section. And that for construction is, for this estimate, is 5.3 million.
Okay.
That doesn't include engineering, which kind of, depending on how this conversation and ultimately what the board shakes out, could be anywhere from 250 to 500,000 or more, depending on, how much or little of this we want to do. And then I would just say, you can kind of modify this if you're thinking about doing half of it at a time. Well, then you could kind of figure out what the cost of each phase would be, or, you can see some of the quantities and lengths and that sort of thing that are in here. And if you, didn't want to do curb and gutter, then there's kind of a savings that you can see there. And it can give you an idea of, where this will ultimately be depending on what you pick and envision for the road.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the bridge this estimate does not address any potential needs with the bridge that's there, correct?
That's correct.
And it's today's dollars too.
And it's today's dollars too.
We know this isn't happening for a while. It's a scary number. Bob, tell me your thoughts on this, especially the urban versus historically. Okay, let's go down to Bay Road and a few other things that I've lived through on this board. You can forget about, but you can pretty much forget about those STPs at funds, because they let us on for at least 3 years before they said no. I mean, they just kept leading us on and leading us on. It was an incredibly crazy experience. And all the money ends up in Milwaukee County because their roads are so bad and they have so many more roads. So the chances of getting that money are about like that. If we want to tease ourselves and give ourselves great pain, we can hope for that. Now, on Donges Bay Road, we looked at an urban design and we looked at a semi-urban design, and we ended up with what you see. We ended up replacing Donges Bay Road in the same footprint we had before, maybe slightly wider gravel shoulders. That was the only real change. And the residents were vehement that that's what they wanted. They did not want Germantown to turn into a city and have like streetlights and curb and gutter and all kinds of other weird stuff. And we packed this room. Probably, I don't know, it was a front runner with the garbage cans. I mean, they were both the most serious issues ever that I've sat through here, but packed this room time after time after time, telling us what they didn't want. When I look at this, it's a this is why I'm asking you, Bob, it's a highly traveled road, much more highly traveled than Donges Bay, I would say. It's a main thoroughfare into Germantown and out of Germantown. It's only gonna get bigger with the new subdivision now. And is there a tipping point where you kind of move over to urban design? Or can we just have some kind of like a limited, like some curb and gutter where needed for drainage and not, curb and gutter for drainage? Because we have some sidewalks there already, or do we have to go full tilt into something like this?
Well, that's where I was, I guess I don't have the background as far as the history of how we got to this 5.3. It sounds like almost the Cadillac. It's an urban section.
Yes.
The whole length, urban section. Within just about the same footprint as the existing.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much from Mequon South to like Concord or Dottie Way.
Because what
grant.
I mean, as far as future development in that corridor, I mean, traffic drives your sections big time, right? You know, do you need turning lanes? What's the length, the queue length of turning lanes and that? So we do a study as far as future traffic counts on this road to determine that we don't need turning lanes. We don't, because urban or rural doesn't affect the capacity, what you can do with the traffic and that. It's more of aesthetics, you know. You start putting curb and gutter and now you're gonna have to start putting storm sewers in now too. You know, that's the other cost also.
Yep, there's a cost and operations and maintenance that go along with that.
I remember Donges Bay. I mean, we wanted to stay within the same footprint. I mean, I was fighting tooth and nail to get some separation between the edge of the road and that multi-use path. Do you remember that? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
just 3 feet, you know, and boy, they fought that tooth and nail. So, you know, if you go, you can tighten up a section if you go curb and gutter. Then you don't have to have a side slope or a shoulder, side slope, and then a ditch. So curb and gutter keeps a tighter footprint on your road. So there's the advantage in that regard. But the perception of a lot of people in Germantown is that's not the rural look that we want.
Right.
That's
what I hear all the time.
So believe it or not, a lot of it comes down to the aesthetics and the perception,
Mhm.
you know, and not as much as the engineering in that. But is there room for future development along this corridor which would significantly increase traffic on that, which means that and if that's the case, it sounds like our current,
Built up.
our 5.3 would
Yeah.
not be enough money because we don't have turning lanes or even signals or anything like that.
You know, there is room for future development. And now the street name is escaping me. Lilac.
Yep.
Yeah, and there have been actually nothing serious, just some initial contacts from residential developers that have asked for information about some of the areas on Lilac,
The farm field, is that what we're thinking?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's one of them in specific, but
But we have been getting calls related to that, and I think at some point in the future, it's likely that there would be some sort of a proposal. It's relatively close to existing sewer and water. So I think when you think about the lifespan of the road that we're talking about, sometime within the lifespan of that road, there will be some, additional residential development that feeds into division.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know if I answered your question, Terry, I kind of rambled, but, I just don't know the history of the studies.
Yeah.
For us to get to this.
Well, I mean, an option could be to do some traffic counts and study along, kind of a study, community engagement leading into design.
That's a good idea. The community engagement for this one is going to be important.
It's typical
Yeah.
protocol, anyway. What was driving this? Just the condition of the road? I mean, I drive it every day. I get it.
Yeah.
It's not, and I am waiting significantly longer at my Juniper Drive intersection to get on the road. So traffic really has increased since I moved in there in 1990. So yeah, I agree. It's increased, but maybe it's peaking out now because there's no other development going in. But so it's mostly conditioned that way why we're looking at this at all.
Yeah, I think
The condition's terrible.
paired
Yeah.
with, the volume of traffic on the road.
I agree, though. I mean, traffic impact analysis, do some forecasting here. If everything would build out as it could, what does that add as far as traffic volumes? And then certainly staging, as you said, Matt, we don't have to build the whole thing at the same time, just different stages. I know it draws out the impact to the public, but something's got to give. Dollars or schedule or. So.
Other comments, Rick?
Yeah, I can shed some light on it. The 5.3 million full urban build out was to try to get that grant, what is it, the
STP.
STP grant. And the former public works director, in order to get that grant, you have to do full urbanization, is my understanding. So that's where the total came from in that perspective on it. I tend to agree that most people don't want that they want more of an urban look at it. So I think that's probably the way it's going to go, but we do need that. I just looked at the DOT's traffic studies, and the last one counts that they had were in 2018 and 2019, and it's right around 5,000 a day for that road. So obviously we could use another study on this thing to see what the local or the current volumes are on it.
Well, I personally think a traffic study is a good starting point, and then kind of put together some kind of a plan where we do a traffic study, it comes back to us, we start looking where that funding might come from. Because if we do use ARPA funds, it has to be used in a certain time frame as well, correct?
Has to be
So-
committed this year, by the end of the year.
It has to just be committed but not used. We could wait another year.
Well, committed in federal appropriations terminology, it means that you basically have it under contract and then you start spending it within roughly 90 to 120 days.
Oh,
So we would need to start construction in
That's not gonna
2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So we'll have to think of is there any way we can do smoke and mirrors with that and use that money for roads in another place and not borrow as much for roads and borrow that,
That
put
would be,
that in the bank or,
that would be an option and
You
we
can't do
could
that,
use it
Terry.
for other roads, and then use the borrowing capacity that we would have used for those other roads for this road. So there's some ways to do that. Although again, just to point out, well, and I know we'll work to bring this number down from the 5.3 million, but this is still going to be a very expensive project, even if it's a hybrid or more of a rural cross section. So,
okay.
but certainly, I think one of the real good uses of the ARPA money that we have available would be to do the traffic study to start the community engagement and pay for that process.
No, I tend to agree. I mean,
Could design be included in that as well? So you could kind of build
'Cause
that.
that you could get done.
Yeah,
with-
right. we could
within
get
that
done
timeframe. Yeah.
As Steve described.
This was just for discussion, correct? So if there's anything concrete, you'll come back to us. But I tend to agree with Bob too. I think that, just knowing the village, having lived here for as long as I have, it's going to be redo it as sort of a rural road, but perhaps with some turn lanes or something for the subdivisions or whatever. But other than that, that's what you're going to end up with. Nobody wants some fancy street lights with curb and gutter up and down. That was another one of the things that happened to Donjas Bay. In order to even apply for the funding, they made us go that route. And nobody wanted that. That's what packed the room. But anyway, okay, this was a great start. Thank you very much for this.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, well, that brings us, I guess, to our next meeting date already. Does the Tuesday generally work for everybody then? Getting back to the Tuesdays for now? Because that would make February 6th is our next date. If that
I
works.
would prefer Wednesday if we could.
Really? Because I could do Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't know about everybody else. What do we think? Does it matter to you, Tuesday or
I could
Wednesday?
make it Tuesday, but I would prefer Wednesday.
As I learned last night, the public safety meeting is actually written into the village codes as to the date and the time it has to start. Is this meeting also?
What day is that
Yeah.
one on?
Has to be on Mondays at 6 PM. Has to be the first Monday at 6 PM
Okay.
by village code. I was surprised and inconvenienced also.
Yes, no kidding. All right, but you're okay with the Wednesday then for this? Okay, so Wednesday, 5:30 in this meeting room. That'll be our next date. I don't think unless Steve or Matt, if you have any announcements, or then we will adjourn at 6:12. Thank you, everyone.
It's specified we've been violating a long time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Somebody check